Khambatta, architect by profession, sculptor by choice. I started sculpting way back in 1982 and I mostly use metal and carved wood, and I make pieces which are like 4 inches small to about 60 feet tall. Coincidentally, the tallest piece which I did was for Jaguar Land Rover India, and this was for the launch of their new vehicle, the F-Pace. So I just love vehicles, I love sculpting, and in the beginning I used to go to scrap yards, take old vehicles, take them apart and start welding them and making them into pieces of art. That's how my journey started. I have been in love with the Land Rover Defender since ages. I was born and brought up in the Parsi colony where I used to see these old Parsis with their Defenders, and it's just a shape which I fell in love with. I just adore that car. And finally in 85, I gathered enough money to buy a Defender of my own, which was a 1966 model. It was just as old as me. And I was 20 years old and the Land Rover was 20 years old. And I loved it. It was like beaten. I could take it through mud, and I used to use it to go to my college. And it was almost like a school bus because all my friends would pile onto it. I was the only person with my own vehicle back then. I love the Defender. So let's come to Massimo Frascella today. He is the creative head of Land Rover, and the Range Rover Velar, the Range Rover Evoque, and the Defender that we are talking about today are his own babies. It is wonderful to talk to designers because I always admire the creative process as to what goes on in their heads, and from ideas which are absolutely wonderful to be able to put it down on paper and then come up with a final product. It's magic, and the process is magical itself. Today, when we talk to Massimo Frascella, we'll try to find out his journey in taking an icon and then redesigning it for the 21st century and what went into it.
It's interesting the story that you just told, and you know how passionate and how attached you are to Defender and what it means, Defender. Interesting enough, for me growing up, you know, I wasn't really into cars. You know, it just happened to be later in my life when I started to have this interest and passion. It became a passion, right? But having said that, there were just a few cars that you couldn't ignore, even if you were not into cars. And you know, Land Rover series, the Defender was clearly one of them. You know, it's one of those cars that it's so unique. It becomes the definition of an off-road vehicles, right? As a kid growing up, you think about an off-road vehicle, you think about the Defender. And then, you know, as I was maturing with the time and then going to school, I started to really appreciate the spirit, right? What that car meant and what it was all about. And I started to appreciate the aesthetic, that unique character that the vehicle had. And you know, I clearly fell in love with Defender as this, call it giant icon, automotive icon. So when we first started to work on the new Defender, you can only imagine how big of a task it was for us in design. It wasn't difficult to motivate people, as you can imagine. You know, everyone was so excited, everyone was so on board, you know, to have a chance to redesign the new Defender. But it's been a long journey. It's been an incredible long journey. We started back in 2013. You know, as I said, replacing the last automotive icon. I like to say that it doesn't get any better than that from a designer point of view. You know, like when can you do anything that is bigger than that? Probably never. You know, that's the climax of almost your career, and so it's a big task, but a lot of you know, very fascinating project. And bear in mind that Defender for us, you know, when we start thinking about Defender, it wasn't just one vehicle. You know, it's about thinking a full family of vehicles. So it gives you an idea of the complexity, you know, the level of personalization, you know, thinking about the accessories and all that. So it's been a very fascinating journey. What we're very clear from the beginning is it was to really capture that essence, that spirit of the vehicle, and you know, bring it to the modern world. You know, make it relevant, not copy the past. Just, you know, translating and you know, carrying that spirit, that essence, and make it relevant for today.
So as a designer, I know designing is a difficult task. And to design something from scratch is wonderful, but to take an icon, to take a design icon which has lasted for 70 years and then sort of retweak and then redesign it for the 21st century is even more difficult. And so what I want to find out from you, Massimo, is what was the most daunting task in preparing the Land Rover Defender for the 21st century?
Well, the most difficult thing I think was actually, and I know it sounds a bit a paradox, but it was actually not to think too much about the Defender, because the Defender is such a, we just talked about it, it's just such an established icon that inevitably some of the Defender will come back in what we were doing. So the challenge that I gave myself and the team was in the initial phase of sketching, almost like don't think about Defender,
Okay.
what can we do? Because as I said, given the very nature of the vehicle, some of the elements will come back in what we were doing, and if you think about, the very short overhangs for approach and departure angles, the ground clearance, the silhouette for the, this supreme command driving position, those are part of the nature of the vehicle, so inevitably we'll come back into the new design. But we didn't want to do a retro. That's why, almost like not look at the old Defender. That was probably the biggest challenge in the beginning. Then clearly throughout the whole program, as you can imagine, there's been a lot of challenges in realizing that vision that we had through the maturation and through the production phase and working with engineers and all. So there were quite a few challenges, but yeah, I mean, you see me smile.
So what I also want to know is that, like a die-hard Defender fan like me, if I have a look at the new Defender, will I be able to pinpoint that, okay, fine, this is the element that was there in the old Defender and it's been tweaked and put here? Or is it so obscure that I'll have to probably ride the vehicle and then get used to the ride and feel that it is redesigned? Or is it something that I'll be able to pick out immediately by looking at the vehicle?
Well, of course, I mean, if we stay on the outside, on the exterior of the vehicle, one thing, if you look at the rear end is very sheer, it's cut off and it's got a spare mount, the spare wheel that is mounted on the side hinge tailgate. And that is actually there for a reason, is to minimize that overhang, right? So that's a very Defender approach with the, it's a design, it's a form following function in some respect. When you look at the interior, this bare structure of the IEP, the gear shifter that is nested into that frame, the very product industrial approach in the design, very reductive, this very open layout, and all of these things are very, very Land Rover, very, very Defender, And then some of the nods like the Alpine glass, in the rail in the back. So it's clearly a Land Rover. The interesting thing I always remember when we were doing clinics, and in the corner clinics for a different vehicle, by the way, but in the corner we had one of the early models that was under the cover, and the people that were walking through the room to clinic these other vehicles, obviously they will see this model undercover, and they will all stop and start smiling. Because they didn't know we were working on one, right? But they just start smiling and they look, that's the new Defender, right? And you can tell right away that you just hit the nail on the head right there.
I have already asked you about what points you've taken from the earlier Defender and put it in the new model. A contrary question now. What is in this Defender that there was never existing in the earlier one? Can you tell us something about features which you've put in which will make it good to ride through the 21st century for a long, long time?
So, well, that's a very important point for the new Defender, because clearly, as I said, we wanted to capture that spirit, but we wanted to make it relevant on, today's world, basically for an everyday use as well. So technology is clearly very critical to this vehicle. We've introduced the PV Pro infotainment system, which is a fantastic piece of work. You know, is a system that is always on. So you know, you have no lag or response is so quick. It's accessible all the time, and it's you know, very ergonomic, and it's very user friendly. You know, you can shortcut all the main tasks within one or two steps. You don't have to get lost in the menu, and you know, while you're driving for it. It's so intuitive, and it's a fantastic piece of kit. The other thing that this infotainment system has is the software over-the-air update. So it's what we call the SOTA. So it's brilliant because you don't have to worry about it. The system updates itself all the time. Whenever there is an update, it's almost like it gets better with the age. If you think about it, you know, as you grow with your Defender, you know, always has the latest and the best update. You don't have to take it to a dealer. You know, it's worry-free, and you always have the latest technology installed. So it's brilliant. And another thing is what we call the clear sight rear view, which is a fantastic feature, very clever. Which turns the conventional rear view mirror in front of you into a screen that displays the image that is transmitted by a rear-facing high-definition camera that is mounted on the roof, and that allows you to have a very clear and wide view at the back of the car. And this is particularly great. Not only normal running condition, because it's almost like not having the pillars at the back and the spare wheel mounted, but also when you're carrying a full load of passengers, right? When you have the jump seat in the middle, in the front row, or where your trunk is full of stuff, right, that you can't see at the back. So you just switch an instant, and you can see all the way clearly at the back. These are all technologies that are very critical to today's usage, both on-road for a normal use, but clearly also off-road. The 360 camera that allows you to see all the surrounding of the vehicle. The key is that we wanted this car to be able to, we wanted customers to be able to enjoy a ride with this car even for a long journey, right? That's what I mean by being relevant today. You know, yes, it's a car that you can take on the most extreme off-road that you can possibly imagine, but you can also drive 1,000 miles on a motorway in maybe in a couple of days, hopefully. But you know, you'll be just very relaxed and enjoying the drive. So, yeah, technology is massively important on this vehicle.
So tell me, this is something I feel as a designer. Once I design a series of sculptures for a show, it could be 25, 30 pieces, and you work for it for the past 5 years, 6 years, you put up a show. What happens is the moment I put it up to the public and it's out there, I, in my mind, have finished my work. It then takes on a complete life of its own. After that, where it goes, who buys it, it completely sort of goes that way. My mind is already thinking of the next collection, of what is next, because I feel this is done, this is out there, now what more do I do? Similarly, I want to ask you that after this was done, after the Defender was designed and put on the road, what is the next step that you would take in terms of designing, redesigning, or just in general?
Well, it's difficult to answer this question, but clearly, as I said, Defender is a family of vehicles, right? From the beginning, we had that clear in mind. So, eventually in the future, we'll expand. I don't know how, but we're looking at opportunities. What we have done is just recently we have introduced the new Defender hardtop, right? So that is is continuing a lineage from that it's 70 years old. With the first Land Rover series. So the new hardtop comes in both the 90 and the 110 body styles, and they bring all the capability, the functionality, this premium ride, the technology, everything that is in Defender. It brings it to the commercial, industry field. so it's a great addition to the family. It's already a step into expanding this family, and it comes with this front row of seat, the two seats with the divider and as a compartment that separates from the loading area.
Okay.
And you still have the option to have a jump seat in the middle, which is great.
Yeah.
So you can have the front row of three. So that's what's next, so to speak, for the Defender. And then, as I said, it's a family, so a family will expand.
I'm so happy that you mentioned the family of Defender. That's wonderful. I just wish it gets more and more children and you get to design more wonderful stuff. I heard recently you took a trip to Italy with the new Defender.
Oh yes,
Defender?
I did.
Tell us about that. Tell us about that.
That was great. So basically, every year I drive to Italy in the summer. Right? We have now we have two little dogs, and because of the regulations, we can't fly with the dogs, and I don't want to take the dogs on. On the cargo on the plane. So we decide to drive every year. This year we did it with the Defender, and let me tell you, it's been just an amazing experience, right? Absolutely. Now, incidentally, I said 1,000 miles, door to door from where I live in England to my hometown in Tuscany. It's literally 1,000 miles. So I call my Mille Miglia, like the historical race is my Mille Miglia in the summer.
Yeah.
And it was an absolute pleasure. The thing that was really fascinating is to see how much attention the car will get as I was driving through, let's say, France on the motorway. Sometimes you will get people that almost like overtake you, and then they stop. They want to see the car, right? And you drive like pretty fast, like side by side for a while, and then they wave at you because they've seen this thing that is so amazing. I mean, it just behaved beautifully, even beyond my expectations. I drove a Range Rover to Italy. The level of comfort that you have on Defender is very much comparable. It's to think that you can do something like that, cross 4 countries, go through the Alps, the Mont Blanc tunnel, going through the newly built bridge in Genoa from Renzo Piano, it was quite emotional on this car. And to think that you can do that on a vehicle that you can also take literally anywhere, rock climbing or doing the most severe deserts or, the most difficult environment. It's just mind-blowing.
When you talk about the vehicle going through difficult environments, I am reminded about seeing some clips and some photographs of the Paris-Dakar rally. And used to have these toughest of vehicles sort of combating the dunes and the rivers and the mountains and all that. And I remember the service crew. The crew that would be helping the other vehicles drove in Land Rover Defenders.
Well, there you go.
It just showed how dependable those cars are, and it's wonderful. And I'm so proud that you've completely revamped it. It's come up with a new avatar, and I'm very happy to have spoken to the designer who's responsible for that. And it fills me with a lot of pride to know that I know the vehicle and now I know the designer also.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Massimo. It's been wonderful. It was such an invigorating chat, and I got so much out of you. And I can see your passion. I can definitely see it, and I know that you put your labor of love into the design of the Defender. I'm waiting to sit inside, and the moment I do, I'm going to call you and tell you what I think about it. From whatever I can see, you've done an absolutely phenomenal job, and I thank you and I congratulate you for the new Defender. Thank you very much.
Thank you.